the conversation today is, remember that we were talking about, okay, how do we ground all this spirituality into a architectural project, you know? How do we, and with community. So what I was trying, what I will show you is the process of actually, what do we do when we arrive to the territory? What do we do with the information that we find about the cosmovisions that we're being invited to visit? How do we start this interaction, and how and what starts happening, you know? Because of course, remember that the outcome in this process is more than being very, very aware and listening to materials and heritage and liminality and voices of human and non-human. We do not have a design or something concrete, but the process itself keeps bringing us more findings. So I'm gonna start sharing. Please let me know if you are seeing my screen.
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay. The region that we're visiting today, it's called the Mataven. Mataven is right in the border with Venezuela. This is the department of El Bichada, and it's as you can see, a region of rivers. It's where the three main rivers of Colombia get together, and in this specific caño, there's this reserve of jungle that is basically taken care by the Piaroas. The Piaroas is this ethnic group that is actually much more stronger. Well, they are a much more quantity in Venezuela, but there's still a lot of Piaroas in the cuencas of Mataven. And there's also three more ethnic groups: Puinave, Curripaco, and Sicuani. They share similar crafts and cosmovisions, but they're four different ethnic groups, and they do share the territory, and they do have interesting interculturality dialogues. El Bichada is this region is a region that has flooding seasons and dry seasons. And in dry seasons, you have beaches around the river, and in drought seasons, you're swimming in the top of the trees. And it makes a really diverse ecosystem, one of the most diverse in Colombia. And it has the characteristics of very similar to it's very close to this Orinoquia region, and it's very similar to the Amazonian. So it has a lot of similarity in their food, which is called the yuca brava, which I'll tell you about it. Where is the basis of their food system, which is a very crazy domestication of a toxic food that they domesticate in order to make it the base of their food system. A yuca is a tuberculo, a root. Do you see my mouse?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so many of you ask me, like, what do you do when you arrive, to a territory, and what's the starting point of the conversation? And arriving with not knowing, so of course the first conversations, if they are available, are around the crafts, which, like I said before, the crafts or the cultural expressions of the territory is what actually will illustrate you the relationship between the culture and the territory. So this community is they're weavers, basketry mainly, and they're very, very talented artists. So that the dialogue around the basketry is the beginning of the conversation. You're seeing here a lamp made out of this specific palm called la chonta, that then becomes an architectural element. And you see, if you're seeing this basket, this is called el mamure, which is actually the very unique way of weaving that they have with two different types of fibers. And this actually, I'm seeing this photo now, you don't see it at the beginning, but then these expressions become actually the elements of architecture that becoming architecture that you don't then when you have experience that you understand that it's a possibility, but at the beginning you don't realize how strong it is as a craft for them to become a shelter. So the beginning is a slow beginning. It's a lot of meetings. It's creating a lot of trust. So there's a dialogue. Some of these communities, we don't speak the same language. They don't speak Spanish. So we do need the assistance of a few translators around in order to invite them to share. In this photo, we have Delcia, who's actually was invited to Exportesanías in Bogotá and had a piece that she was working with an artist and with another person that arrived to this community. And she was telling us at that point that she was very impressed that she was able to weave a drawing, because with this architect they were trying to understand the housing, and he made it a drawing, and then she was able to weave it. So the beginning of the interaction with the community is a lot of dialogues and a lot of invitations of understanding what is it that they feel comfortable, or what is their art, what is their strongest form of expression, in order to understand where can we keep talking and going deeper and deeper. When there's such a diverse interculturality and such a gap in communication, what becomes a unifying subject as well is the materials that they work with. This is called la piragua. It's a fiber that they grab from the forest, and this is one of the reasons why I make so much emphasis in the tactile memories and the material exploration. This and finding the common grounds of understanding the territory and the interaction with the territory is understanding how do they go and collect the fibers. So the second thing that we do, besides talking and waiting for the word to be shared, if they feel like sharing, is understanding their processes of the material. Here in the left is Sue, one of the artists that we invited to territory, actually trying to understand the body language through just body movement of how they get this material, the piragua, which are some lianas that hang from the upper trees, and you have to shake them and shake them and shake them until you can pull them down and grab them. And so that's the second scene that is extremely abundant to find connections or dialogues or a lot of learning, is processes of the raw material, which is something that going back to the vessels and what we're aiming to achieve as a dialogue is this material exploration. Again, we don't have to be in the jungle or be part of a community in the jungle to have a very clear process of a raw material, but we do have sensorial and already a lot of ideas of what we want to explore. And when you're going to be back in your groups and you're going to be trying to share what is it that you want to shelter from, and what is it a shelter for you, exploring what the materials that you're going to start exploring with, and sharing your interests through senses, through tactile memory, is going to be an extremely abundant scenario for a dialogue. So that's why the crafts are such an abundant place to sit and talk, because there's a lot to share. In the right, you see everything that they do. And some of them are, most of them are functional, are things that they actually need to survive, to eat. That big, long, like sausage that you see in the back is called a cebucan. Cebucan is what they do to extract the yuca, which is this potato that they eat. And with that long, like snake, they squeeze the toxic out of the yuca, and through a longer process, they're able to then bring it back to the table. So it's out of also, the crafts become a lot of it's a book out of the functionalities that they have with the territory. So sharing the process of the raw material is almost like the first long conversation that we have, which also take us to the territory to understand, what is it? How long does it take? How long is it take just to grab it, then to dry it, in this trip, we're taking out piragua, that is the red one, then tirita, that is another one that you're going to see for basketry later. And again, it's just an observation exercise and a physical, very strong and challenging exercises. And then these dialogues start appearing, where if it's basketry, which is in this case scenario, this is what starts happening. They're weaving there what they call a catumare. A catumare is what the women use. It's like a bag. I have one here. I'll show you. It's like a bag that they put in the head in order to bring the yuca out of the conuco, out of the chagra where they cultivate. So this is like actually the bag that they use to grab their food out of the chagra. And so this is happening after we already understand what that fiber is, how far is it from their houses, how long it takes them, and what is the process to grab it, dry it, and then weave it. And the same with their food. This all the Amazonian region and Orinoquia region. What I was telling you is that the food base alimentation is the yuca. So this tuberculous, that they have to go to the chagra and work with them and take it out of the ground, and then peel it, put it in the catumare, that is these bags that they were weaving, and then go through the whole process of transforming it from a toxic food to something that you can eat. So there's a lot of beliefs in every process, in how you plant the yuca, in how you take it out, and in how you pack that bag, for example. For them, packing that bag is like if you're dealing with a pregnant belly. So you have to put all the yucas on the same direction. You have to unpack it immediately when you arrive to the kitchen in order for whatever pregnancy is in the community to come out okay. And that's an example of many behaviors that they have with their food, with their well-being. That I'm sure you've found some stories of Pedro and the relationship that they have with their land, and how they believe that the well-being is around the interaction with the land. Guys, if you want to stop me at any point to ask questions, please. So there's a lot of things that you're going to see later in the architectural expressions that are in their daily.
There's a question.
I'm not listening very well.
If you could talk us through again, sorry, se me olvidó el nombre, de la cesta que es alargada. So they're asking what the process is again to extract like the toxins of the yuca.
Okay. So yeah, so it's amazing because this yuca, it's called the yuca brava. There's two types of yucas. A yuca is like a potato, which is a tuberculous. Okay. If I zoom in my screen, I'm zooming in your screen as well. I'm sorry.
See, we were talking about this. We were talking about this with you, Toby, this morning. It's exactly the same. We're talking about a similar.
Of what?
Yeah. No, because Toby was talking about, I can tell you later, sorry, just to contextualize into. So he comes from Nigeria, and we were talking about how women also use this wooden to work it through.
So basically it's crazy because the yuca, again, it's like a potato. It's like a huge potato. I don't know if you can see the roots. It's actually like a heart-shaped root that they're taking out of the soil. And there are two types of yuca, a non-toxic one and a toxic one. The one that is the base of the whole food system of the whole Amazonian Orinoquia in Colombia is the toxic one. And I believe it's toxic because it's the only food that can survive in the jungle. So in the middle of the jungle, you see these conucos or chagras. This means these planting areas for food. This is exclusively worked with by the women. And so the logic of it is that they're toxic in order for the environment to let it survive as a food. And then I don't know, and I've researched, and I haven't found exactly how many people died in order to do the process that now they do, because they have, it's cianuro. I don't know how you say cianuro in English, but what they do have to extract from the yuca brava is this toxic element called cianuro in order to make it an edible food. So they take it out from the soil, they put it in their bags called catumare, they take it to the kitchen, and they peel the yuca. They peel it completely, and then they la rayan, and then they make it this como se dice rayado, like this, you know, it's already scratched. I don't know, you see that in the right, they're making it it's not a powder, but let's say it's a powder, you know, they're scratching it, right? And then in the left, you see that they already have all the yucas into this masa, and they're putting it in the cebucan, you see? Am I being heard? You guys froze.
No, estamos acá, acá estamos.
Yeah?
We're here, sí, we're
Ah,
here.
bueno. Okay. Sorry, es que I'm insecure with virtuality. So they put it into the cebucan. This cebucan has an amazing technique. So you see here all the peeled yuca in the catumare that they're taking they're peeling it here in the right, and then they make it this huge mass that they put it into the cebucan. And I will show you later where the cebucan is. This whole snake receive all this, and then they squeeze it, and then the cianuro comes out. The whole toxic part comes out. They have to leave it squeezing like for a night or a day, and then they bring it out of it, and then they toast it, and then they make these huge arepas or pancakes called casabes. The cianuro, what comes out, the poison, they actually cook it later, and then with the poisonous, non-poisonous anymore, cooked cianuro, they do the most famous ají, like spice of the Amazon, called tucupi. So this actually, the whole community dynamics are around this. The women plant the chagras, they pick it up, they're in the kitchen all day preparing casabe, because that's what they eat all day. And the men are doing other tasks. In this region, the men are fishing. So, for example, in this community, which is, I would say, it's a very small, I would say it could be from 100 to 250 people. There's only two women elders. And this is not a community where you arrive and they're telling you very clearly about your cosmovisions. The elders do have a very strong memories of how they used to live, but the young people are already in between and struggling and wanting to leave the territory. So it's a very common scenario of what's happening everywhere. And this process, just visiting them and asking them to show the process of the yuca brava and to show the process of the piragua for weaving, makes the grandmother with the daughters and with the granddaughters get together and revive these things, which are only carried by the elders at this point. So that's something that you're actually don't realize, that it's not your main goal, but only arriving with that curiosity is activating a lot of links that are kind of very weak. This is very beautiful because this is the river, when it comes down, remember it's droughts and high seasons. When the river comes down, these are the colors of the clay. So this is the panton that we have to do natural plasters there. And this is just a discovery that we were doing with the men there, which when I came for the first time in dry season, and I was seeing all these colors in the border of the river, and I was like, wow, are those clays? Can we paint with that? Can these be colors? Like remember what happened in the forest, just with a little bit of digging down, we found already two colors. So this is the panton. that we were later using for the plasters. And these were, I have been just discoveries around the curiosity and looking for creativity around what you find. Then these plasters become the Pantone, and then what we did with you in a very small scenario of understanding what is clay, what is the same thing we do in the territories. We see what works. We do different tryouts to understand if it's going to crack or not crack. Of course, as you can see, the first rough plaster is always going to crack because you're trying to maximize what you have. And then you start experimenting with the plasters to see how can you end up with a properly plastered wall. But this is all through empirical exploration. And in this case, for example, they didn't know how to plaster with the soil. They did know how to plaster with cement, and they were great using the llana, the tools, and they were master plasterers. But because of what they learned when they bought cement and brought and put cement on top of their earthen walls, which is a huge mistake. So they didn't know the technique, but they didn't trust their own soils, basically. This is something that started happening in the conversation. In the left, we have these sellos, like stamps, that they use when they have festivities and they want to put their costumes, their natural costumes. These are the symbolisms for men and women in what they use as makeups. They put it in their arms and in their face. And then what happened later is that we had the idea of using this symbolism and the Pantone of the rivers to start plastering the walls with the symbolism in the walls. And in the right, this is what we call the local technologies. This is the Cebucan. This is the yucca is inside. And this is like the technology that they've invented to squeeze the toxicity out of the yucca through these prensas. I don't know how to say. You move this log, and you stretch this longer, and it keeps squeezing and squeezing. You guys have any questions?
Yeah, why was the cement a big fail on the mud walls?
Why was the cement a big fail in the walls, plastering the walls?
That's a great question. Earthen architecture. I'll show you a photo later. Earthen architecture. When you work with earth, adobes, bareque, rammed earth, whatever technique you choose, you're working with a material that is alive. It's alive. It has a life. It breathes. It's like your skin. You sweat. When you want to work with the earth, there's some golden rules. The first golden rules of earthen architecture is good boots and good hat. In order for it to last for centuries. If you build an earthen structure with no roof or with no foundation in a rainy area, it's going to be an ephemeral structure. And it may be misunderstood as saying like, no, earthen architecture doesn't work. But we have examples all over the world that earthen architecture can live for centuries, years. And it lives either because it's in the desert and it doesn't rain because the main enemy is the water, or it's properly built, which is good foots and good hats, which means a good footing on a different material, stone or tires or bricks or something that is not vulnerable to humidity. And a good hat means a good overhang, right? And the third golden rule is that you plaster it with minerals, which ideally when you work with soil, we're talking about lime plasters. Because you need to let those walls breathe. If you plaster it with cement, and we can go, if you're interested in going into earthen techniques details, we can go deeper in another session. When you plaster it with cement, which actually cement, if we go back to the Roman Empire, the cement of the Romans was the limestone. Because of the misuse of the limestone, we are getting short of lime in the world, at least in Colombia. But what happened when ancestrally was the lime was our cement. The thing is that lime has a different, slower process of drying, and industrialization came. We started having to have a rush on things to go faster, and we wanted to build higher. So a lot of chemicals were put to the lime, and this is cement. So if you put cement to plaster an earthen wall, what's going to happen is that it's not going to let the wall breathe. And it's going to, I don't know if you've seen it probably, but it's going to start like creating bubbles, you know, because it's trying to breathe, and it has a lot of chemicals that are not behaving as a skin, which only lime or other soils will do. And that's why cement is a big mistake for earthen structures. Any other question?
No, we're good.
No?
No, thank
Okay,
you.
so after sharing the daily interactions of their food, of their materials, of everything, then you're a little bit more landed in the territory, and you understand a little bit more the distances that they have to go to get either food or materials to build. You start understanding how they inhabit, and that is necessary in order to intend to facilitate anything in territory. In this case, this indigenous organization called Mataveni de Ayu, the local Piaroas have their own NGO, and they from the government, I don't remember how they got this grant or built a hotel. This is in the middle of nowhere. So the beautiful part of this process is that it's based on cycles. When we can cut piragua, we can cut piragua. When we cannot cut piragua because it's the wrong moon or the high season, then we have to wait 6 more months, and the job site will stop. So they have this structure already built, and they wanted to become it into a hotel. And when I arrived there, they wanted to do basically like they build a lot with wood as well, because the woods of the jungle are the best woods of the world, as we know. So they wanted to build everything with wood and and put bunk beds and receive massive groups without really thinking through what exactly was tourism for them, what exactly could be harmful about that type of tourism, how they were going to host it. And after doing this first visit of recognizing all their dynamics with the territory, we started understanding what is it exactly that they wanted to do, and what was tourism for them, what they wanted to share as opening the house. No, since it's such a in the middle of nowhere place, it's going to be a very selected interaction of interculturality. So when I arrived and we wanted to start talking about opening the house, the first house that we talked about was their ceremonial house. This is called the Churuata o Pureido, which is the ceremonial house of the Piaroas, which ancestrally, as the grandmother Gloria of this community told us and reminded us, this is where everyone used to live. And there was no rectangular structures. This is all the families, which at that point must have been, I don't know, I would say 6 or 7, would live inside the Churuata. And that's where everything happened, and that's where everything, and Gloria is the only one in this community that has lived that experience. When I started working here, it was 7 years ago. This Churuata did not exist because they've lost their shamans. The medicine here is called the yopo. The shamans share the yopo. They also do ayahuasca as well. And when I arrived here, they didn't have their ceremonial houses. So they had the NGO that I was working with brought a shaman from Venezuela to guide these Piaroas from Colombia to build again a ceremonial house, and to start inhabiting. Not the families are living there because they already have rectangular earthen structures around, and they have already another system of inhabiting the territory, but to recover the idea of a ceremonial house. So when they wanted to understand what is it that they wanted to do, we went back to this idea of they started sharing why a ceremonial house is so important for them, and that exactly this is what they would want to show about, or start showing, because they are losing it, about their cosmovision. So I showed you briefly this before, but this was the first dialogue of what they were actually remembering at this point, because the Churuata was being built at this point. They were having these interactions with the Venezuelan shaman that they haven't had, that only the elders remember. So they were really into, oh, this like remembering that the ceremonial house is round because that's how they see their way of thinking. They were understanding that the rectangular architecture that they were now living in was a consequence of the interculturality that they were sharing in their territories. So we started this dialogue around the circular way of thinking and the houses of thought that they were starting to recover before anything. And that if they wanted to open a house or create a hotel or whatever name they were putting it, they wanted to do it in a way that the hotel itself would speak of itself, of how they used to inhabit the territory. So then another phase starts. We've already done the interaction of them showing us, and this could be 1 visit, 2 visits, could be a year. Everything that I've showed you, maybe a year and a half has passed, and now we're starting to understand exactly what is it that they want to show. And then a lot of workshops start happening it's funny because it's very similar to an architectural school at that point, where they start understanding how is it that these shapes starting to represent. And in this case, we were trying to work in plan and in facade at the same time. And this is actually, I guess, where our abilities as architects start coming in, that we can start sharing this idea of representing a space, so we can all together start making sure that we're talking about the same thing. So we had this rectangular structure that they were building already. We had this importance of the Churuata, of bringing that circular architecture back in.
Sorry, Hernando.
And we already...
Sorry to interrupt so abruptly. Is Hernando is joining us now?
Okay. Entonces, ¿paro de compartir?
Taitica, no, si quiere deje tranquila. Taita, ¿me oye?
Nos quedan 15 minutos miércoles. Bueno, sí. Ok.
No. ¿Taitica está ahí?
Sí, señora, por aquí estoy.
Ah, nos oye, buenos días. ¿Dónde está que no lo vemos? ¿Está por ahí? Ay, ¿yo qué hice?
Hola, aquí estoy.
Lo queremos ver. Ahí está.
Por aquí estoy.
Taita, Andrés. Taita, ¿está ahí?
Aquí estoy.
Ah, bueno. Es que le tenemos un mensaje. We have a message.
Oh, muchas gracias.
La Universidad Central San Martín quiere hacerle honoris doctor causa y queremos saber si usted quiere recibir ese reconocimiento.
Mira. Amor.
Sí, ¿dónde está Chris? Ese era el mensaje que le teníamos. Me llegó hoy la noticia y yo tengo el privilegio de pasársela. Lo habíamos nominado a investigador honorario, pero la universidad decidió ir un poco más arriba y darle el reconocimiento más grande que da la universidad. Y queríamos, Chris, noticias. Al Taita Hernando le quieren.
Muy buenos días.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Estos son los estudiantes de primer año de la maestría con los que estamos. Ana Gutiérrez nos está acompañando en línea también.
¡Felicitaciones!
Les voy a traducir. Queríamos comentar, pues, lo llamábamos todos juntos para pedirle al Taita si quisiera aceptar el reconocimiento de doctor honoris causa de nuestra universidad.
So do you understand? Shall I try? I can't translate, I just know what you said. So the university has awarded him an honor. Just one.
Felicitaciones.
Doctor Hernando.
De ahora en adelante nos toca llamarle doctor. Y acá está Pedro con nosotros para pasarle el mensaje.
Ahí está, Juangui.
Hola, Pedrito.
Felicitaciones.
Hola.
Pedro.
Un abrazo grande. Un reconocimiento muy merecido, Taita, por su labor con el pueblo Inga y nuestros pueblos indígenas de Colombia y del mundo.
No tengo palabras, no sé qué decir. Gracias. Muchas gracias.
No hay necesidad de palabras.
Pues en nombre de nuestra familia, como esposa, como mujer, como madre, como compañera de camino de este gran hombre, lo único que puedo decirles es inmensamente gracias. Creo que me quedaría corta en poder expresarle lo que significa para nosotros como personas y lo que significa para nosotros como familia. Este trabajo es un trabajo comunitario que Hernando ha dedicado su vida y que a veces en sus soledades lo siente, ¿no? Siente como las dificultades para poder avanzar, para fluir.
That it's not easy to move forward, but that he keeps pushing and things keeps flowing.
Gracias porque estas son las cosas que endulzan la vida y que permiten que se pueda seguir avanzando y diciendo, no soltemos esto, avancemos, y llena de energía, llena de muchísima energía. Dios les pague, ¿no? Hernando está sin palabras y yo igual, tratando de medio unirnos y hacerlos sentir esto que nos están haciendo sentir como familia. Muchísimas gracias.
They really have no words. Ay, diga, por eso yo estaba desesperada que se conectara.
Ay, sí.
De ahora, entonces ahora esa era mi misión, pedirle pues como su permiso, y ya una vez usted acepte, le llega la carta oficial y la invitación a la graduación en julio, donde le darán el reconocimiento con las graduaciones en toda la universidad.
Gracias. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, yo, si quieren, los dejo y estamos hablando en estos días. Si quieren quedarse con nosotros, Ana está compartiendo un trabajo que ella hizo en la selva del Matavén. Pero queríamos pasarles esa noticia.
Muchas gracias. Pues bendiciones para todos y cada uno de ustedes. Gracias por este mensaje. Y bueno, allá está Pedro, que Pedrito les expresará todo nuestra espiritualidad también y nuestra energía para que puedan seguir aprendiendo desde sus enseñanzas y ustedes también compartirle a él sus apreciaciones, sus conocimientos que permitan avanzar entre Hawái y la Universidad Central San Martín en estos procesos de lucha y de fortalecer los conocimientos para la vida. Así que un abrazo a cada uno de ustedes y a sus familias, que siempre les acompañe el bonito pensamiento. Buena energía.
Felicitaciones, Hernando.
Gracias, Ana. Gracias.
Thank you, and thank you all of us, and that he is very happy that Pedro is here and that we can keep sharing knowledge and spirituality and like beautiful living together with individually, collective, with your families for beautiful lives. Taitika.
Sí, señora.
Hablamos.
Ya hablamos. Chao.
Que celebren,
Chao.
celebren.
Muchas
Gracias.
gracias. Dios les pague.
Gracias.
A celebrar. Y abrazos a Ina.
Ay, gracias.
Catalina, do you want to say a few words about your role in this work and the translation you have?
Yeah, I'm still a bit like shaking, but yeah.
But I think it's important to understand that the university normally honors academics, so if you don't have an academic career pathway, we honor practices as embodied or spiritual. But it's quite a big achievement for Catalina to somehow evidence that and make it recognizable and be recognized. So, well done.
Fernando. Ana, listo. Perdón por la interrupción abrupta.
No, that was a very moved introduction, and it's extremely great news.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, we have 15 more minutes. I'll try to share the rest of the process with you. So we were in the part where we are creating some kind of workshops of collective design that are combining, where am I? That are combining what they've shared about their cosmovision, their needs of needs of infrastructure that they want to actually make up some income and a sustainable and ecological and respectful interaction opening to the territory. They're willing to open their houses. Just as a note, to get here, we have to take a 2-hour little plane and then a 5-hour boat. So it is an extremely unique scenario, and it's going to be a very specific guest who's going to arrive here. So then we start doing some more figurative architectural exercises of discussing with everyone the cosmovision, the sensorial part of the structure, what they have already, what limits us, but as well what they've already built, and this imaginarium of what is this interaction, who are these people what type of people are we inviting. And this is how the design starts coming together. This is extremely important to create ownership of any process, because they know this is theirs. They know that every line that we put on the ground is a line that they've shared and expressed the necessity to manifest. And then this dialogue of this interculturality of this like ceremonial house, but at the same time this rectangular architecture, which is what they are used to at this point in their territories, and what they already have built, and what they need, and what they want to offer as this infrastructure. And it's a beautiful exercise. It's a very empirical one, because we draw a line And then we have to go and see how we're gonna make it a wall. And we're gonna make it a wall, but we need to recognize at least 3 or 4 different woods that we have in territory in order to see if it needs to be a stronger, a thicker one, if it needs to bend. They wanted to do this center as that represents the basketry of their craft. So we were wanting to see if we could weave a wall or not. So it's a dialogue that goes from paper to a one-to-one model to the actual space, back and forth. And then they keep bringing back their relationship with the basketry, the understanding of the building now, and it's a constant dialogue. So it's from sitting and discussing to drawing, to understanding what is a plan vision, to understanding what is a facade, what of their basketry can become a facade, can become a wall. And it's been amazing. How do we do curved walls again? What is an arc? What is the radius? This goes, from scratch to building in a very slow, but at the same time in the fastest way that I've seen it. And it has to be a pace of a constant understanding. We make sure that we are constantly understanding each other. This is a scenario where a lot of interactions, beautiful interactions start happening, which is elders with young people, with kids, and everyone is active and everyone is starting to take this. This part is very important because everyone starts taking their role in what they're actually interested. So some of them love to draw. Some of them want a prototype on site. Some of them want to talk about their cosmovisions, and the whole by doing the whole co-creation process starts actually drawing itself in their strengths and in their challenges through the interest of each person. And this is also an extremely beautiful scenario for ownership of the process. Then, of course, what we understand of architecture starts happening. We start creating plans and renders, because this helps us go back to them and then tells them, so this is what you're thinking. Is this 3D that we did because of the technology that now we can be used, to support the process of co-creation of the imagining situation, and back and forth to the elders. So we go to renders, to the elders, to the young people, to the job site, and then to the materials. So then we have to go to the soil, back to the weaving materials, back to the woods, to understand if wattle and daub is a technique that they recognize, that they want to use. It was beautiful in this scenario because they used to build in earth, but now they don't do it anymore. But when we started doing the whole and understanding that there were very rich clays to work with, and we prototyped in a house, in someone's house, a wall of bareque, the elders came out and say, oh, my house was in wattle and daub, and we did this and we did that, but the rest of the community had no idea that used to be a technique. So this is how we keep designing the place, on actions, in prototyping. Someone in the community says, I have a house I'm building. Can we do the trial there? Can we try the plasters? Can we try the soils there? And then we come back with the renders, and this is another very exciting part of the process, where people start understanding what is it that they're starting to prototype. And then we have the Imaginarium, and then we can say, okay, so that beam can be done in this wood, and this we can weave with that thing. And then now we're all in a very much more synchronized conversation. We create our own blackboards to pin up our things, and we go back. We're prototyping. This is not the job site. We're trying to understand what knot are we going to do? What combination of woods are we going to do? Is the wall going to look curved? Are we going to weave inside and weave outside? What are the times of this execution of getting the materials? To understand and then project ourselves. Okay, so we now are going to need a lot of piragua. Piragua takes, 2 months to get it. Because of the solar of the calendar right now, we cannot get it. So it's going to be in 4 months. I have to come back. So just to keep showing you how open the process has to be. And then, you know, then apparently there's model making capacity, you know, then they want to do their own tiny model, and then they start doing it themselves to understand, and then they start curving the woods to see, now not thinking as a craft, but thinking an architecture. And this is just something that starts happening. And we go back to other types of materials that this starts happening in the process. This is what they do a lot of esteras. They do it as more as floor mats, as mats. But we wanted to explore if we could do walls from them. So again, back to seeing the process, back to different weaving techniques. And then this is something the elders start coming out more and more to teach us more, to enrich the exploration scenario. And the kids are next to them. And then whoever didn't know how to weave that carpet after this process, they know. And we were understanding how big can we work with this. And we went back and forth to the other piragua to see if we could weave what we were thinking of. So then we have the renders, and then the renders also included a little bit of design, of landscape design around it. And then we have the young kids starting to mark the areas that we were going to plant. And we kept prototyping. Because if we don't, I mean, that's why it's so important for you guys to start getting close to material as soon as possible, because this will give you a lot of information of the conversation that you are going to have while you weave with yourself, but as well as the sensorial, the work with light that you want to do, the thickness, the transparency that you want to achieve. Here we were trying to work with this. This actually did not work for many reasons. So, but we only knew it until we mocked up this wall. We do also, they were great doing small models, trying to understand how we're going to do this huge curved wall. Sometimes the little models were not accurate enough, and we had to do just straight on side. This is a combination of 3-4 different woods that we needed to understand how much they bend and what they needed to go through to bend. Some of them were put into water. Some of them needed to be dried in one way or another. And then let's say that the volume started appearing, the transparency started appearing, the texture started appearing. And this is kind of where we're at right now. Actually, we're a little bit more ahead, but for example, in the left, we needed to put, in order to have to block the transparency that we were getting for the weaving exploration, we needed to put this textile that we had to bring somewhere else to make this, to separate really the reception for the room. So these were things that were happening. And then the Pantone that I showed you before, we were already trying it on the wall as plasters. What happened right now was beautiful, but I will show you next class that it is that they were, with the different colors of clay, they were putting their own symbology of their cosmovision on each room. Each room had a story to tell, so each room is being painted depending on the story of the myth of the god that they want to bring into the hotel or to the house. And yeah, I guess this is kind of the story that I wanted to show you on the path of wanting to actually manifest an infrastructure that talks about the cosmovision, that talks about the materials, on a process that is very unique, because we have no time frame. There's no rush. There's no rush, and it's so much in the middle of nowhere that we cannot get anything but what we have. How walls start coming up and textures start coming up that have to do with the ancestral way of building, but a lot with innovation of what they want to do. And I don't know if you guys have any questions before we close.
Gracias, Ana. Questions? Yeah.
Do you think that any of the people will kind of adopt those building methods like back into their culture? I don't know, as in the stuff that they had kind of almost lost to the elders and that they're relearning.
¿Sí oyó la pregunta?
No, 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 no.
So do you think that this like new, or no new, but if they would readopt this and reinsert it as part of their culture, and if this is something like the weaving knowledge more specifically,
yeah.
like if it's something that they had lost and now it's being reincorporated, and if you believe that is something that would live with them from now on, I'm hoping.
But you're specifically talking about the techniques, or these new techniques that they are deciding to create this space with.
Yeah, I guess like when they come to needing to build more, if they want to build more community buildings or their houses again, do you think?
Yeah, through this process, we've already seen that a few houses have been built in Bareque, that is this earthen technique, that they've already used the same plastering recipes that we've discovered. Yes, of course, this happens here because of the interest of them of trying it out in order for them to bring them to their houses. Sometimes it's something that I, as a hybrid foreigner, thinks they should do. Sometimes they want to try. They express they want to do it. But yes, of course, there's a huge replicability. They now know they can weave a wall, and they are craft women, and they go to this huge craft fair in Colombia once a year. Their products have changed. They feel braver to innovate in their craft, and they're also building with earth and plastering with earth. So of course, this is one of the things, and one of the hidden agendas that actually end up happening very faster than what you think.
Any other questions?
Questions. Are there any kind of like extreme weather events or kind of natural disasters in the area? And then if so, are there any kind of measures that you take? I don't know, I just kind of saw the big roof and I wondered if that's a consideration.
¿Sí oyó?
No, no tan bien. What are the
If
weather
there are,
considerations?
if there are like blanked out, like environmental like disasters in the area. So by seeing the roof, he was thinking if there was anything that it's taken into consideration when designing this in terms of like extreme weather conditions.
Yeah, well, where you go, like how they build their houses, it's already structured to survive whatever the environment is. And like I said, like jungle is huge rainy areas. So in jungles, you're always going to see huge roofs. Normally, the beauty of this jungle is that in other jungles in the Pacific or in the Amazon, there's such humidity that you cannot work with earth. You only work with the woods that you have and with huge roofs. You're never going to see an earthen house in the Amazon or in the Pacific coast because it's such a humidity in the atmosphere that the technique would not survive. But in this case, this Vichada Orinoquia region, it's less humid, and you have the perfect combination of the best woods and that you can actually work with earth. So you start seeing this climate ways from how they live, and you have to always have, that's like the golden rules, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, partly. Like the wind, I guess, is like the main thing I was thinking of.
If you can, the main thing that he was thinking of was wind. If there were like any wind, or if these structures are vulnerable to strong storm.
No, this is not a hurricane area. This is not a hurricane area, and I found hurricane areas the most difficult to actually design structures for, but this is not the scenario. Where the roofs respond more to the rain than to winds.
Yeah, just why I asked is because like clearly so much time has gone into like weaving these structures. Yeah, there is such a pity if these considerations weren't making.
So what he was asking, because of the like amount of time and labor that goes into weaving like these big walls, and then they can just be blown away or destroyed. So it was like this, yeah, if there was a dialogue between these two.
There is always a dialogue between weather and their ways of building. And in these communities, they're so knowledgeable about where they're at and how they're inhabiting that they will be the first ones to tell you this is a no-no. I actually was trying to tell them, because of a time frame and because of the meticulosity that needs to create these woven walls, to think of something that could be a more easier way of building. But since this, because of what they already have as a roof and what they are weaving, it's not a risk at this point. And when you arrive to these places, you do not propose. They propose, and they proposed on a very strong rooted knowledge of how they know it will react to the environment. You're there to help create ideas, to have to work on the finishes, but yeah, when you work on extreme weather condition areas, the local ones were the first ones that are going to be more precautious about it. I don't know if I answered you.
Yeah.
There are two questions. Can I start here?
Okay, so I just wanted to know if through your work, and I mean, I did work with indigenous communities as well. Do you at any point feel that you are almost forcing them to stick with their culture when they could probably explore other opportunities?
That's a beautiful question. Especially with young people, yes, you feel that you're projecting in them. I'm gonna say something. Sometimes you are in scenarios that the cultural ownership or the relationship with the culture is so fragile, and it's that sometimes you project this passion of belonging to ancestrality in a scenario that maybe deserves to reroute differently. So yeah, I've had that feeling, and it's a constant worry and dialogue. And again, this is not a discourse of people staying in the middle of nowhere, wearing their ancestral cloths and cooking under the fire. This is not the discourse. The discourse is that we do need innovation in languages. We do have the knowledge, we do have technology, and we have to use it in order to protect the origin, but we do need new languages. And this is something that happens here with this project, for example. They've never used their ancestral knowledge to innovate in something that is, at this point, you don't see it, but this is going to have very different finishes, and it's going very slowly because it's based on the cycles of their calendar. But I think you have to be very sensitive of what it is, alive, and what could you work with, what is that doesn't exist anymore, and what new things are there to create this like healthy interaction and ownership. And at the end is about the excuse of creating a project that becomes a school for them to reroute, for everyone to reroute.
It's quite a general question, but hopefully I'll learn from what you say. Maybe how have you grown as kind of a collaborator and a team worker over like the last 10 years with indigenous communities? Yeah, what have you learned in terms of engagement?
So how have you grown as a collaborator with indigenous communities in the last 10, 15 years? And what have you learned of these collaborations and work?
Well, I've grown a lot in many areas. More as less as what I thought an architect should be, and more of what I think an understanding of regeneration should be. I'm less interested in the design part of, even though I fall in love with a churuata and a ceremonial house, and I end up building a Taurus, and that part is of course something that has happened thanks to the collaboration and the understanding of different ways of building, of ancestral ways of building, of what you've been part of these days, of offering, of being aware of the elements, of the birds, of the wind, of the spirits. So I guess one of the things I've grown more in touch with is of what is exactly architecture for. And in the areas that I've been more interested in developing this understanding is in architecture as a shelter of belongings, as belongings for myself, and as a belongings of what I consider my community is, and belongings of what I consider my family could explore in rooting in relationship with nature. And that has been something that I didn't know I was receiving, but I was receiving constantly from all the ceremonies and all the spiritual talks that I've had in territories and outside of territories with people that are actually like Pedro, connected, and that they grew, that they were raised this way, and somehow this came from community work. This awakening of, this is something that I believe in. This is something that I feel should be integrated in my work as an architect, as a person, and as a facilitator in community process, which is, I would say, the closest expression to what I do. I've learned a lot about, I do think that humans, we are the most complex or living organisms in the whole world. So I've learned a lot about human complexity. I've learned a lot about powerful leadership. I've learned about, at the same time, the complexity shows me the power of the momentum and the energy of humans building together, and this juxtaposition of the conflicts that it exists in a community life. And that's why maybe we are more farther and farther away from leading or being part of a real community that needs to interconnect and dialogue these complexities. And I think it's been the biggest school of material research that exists in the world, going to work with communities. I'm in love with what I see of the body interacting with a material. I think is for me is the highest. I've seen the highest, what I can consider the highest technologies, seeing how people in the jungle interact, manipulate, dry, weave, build, feed their families, build their houses, and this has been also, like, I would say, the third and the main thing of what I've learned from community. This, the language and the power of the body, and the understanding, and how the hands become all the types of hands, the bodies become different because they have this relationship with the jungle as a, not a provider of the material, but as an ecosystem of exchange to shelter. And yeah, I'm always looking at the bodies and then the wisdom and the power that they've developed because of this way of living. I could keep going. I think this is the biggest school ever to work with communities.
I think it's also a nice way of closing the session. So thank you, Ana, for being with us today. We miss you in the room. But do you have any questions for Ana? So I think